everyone. Thank you for joining us. You won't be here the day we're here, but wherever and whenever you are tuning in, we are glad you are. My name is Susan Jarboe, and my fellow panelists are people you know, Reverend Linda Burdett, Linda Baker, and Kathy Cronin. And today we're going to be talking about anger. But before we move into that, let's begin with a prayer. Our Heavenly Parent, thank you for the minds and thoughts of today's panelists that are creating this tape. And thank you for the hearts and souls of those who are watching it. Only you truly know what we are setting out to accomplish today. We have an idea, a vision, hints, and sometimes instructions. We have talents, abilities, and the time to work. However, only you can see in perfect detail the end of every beginning for every project, every season, every life, every panel. Nothing is ever in vain, for even our mistakes and missteps are used for good. Thank you for always being with us. Amen. Today's reading is called A Surprising Command, and it comes from the Center for Action and Contemplation. I don't know how many of you have heard of it. It's a site and a place I really love because it combines our inner worlds with our outer worlds. One of the people who is very highly regarded is Richard Rohr. And I love his books. I love his prayers. And this is one of his daily messages from several weeks ago. It's called A Surprising Command. And let me begin. Be angry, but do not sin. That is from Ephesians 4, chapter 4, verse 26. Now, there are different people commenting on this, and a theologian, Alan Dwight Callahan, writes about a compelling biblical verse. There are two imperatives in the opening phrase of Ephesians 4:26. Two. One is a prohibition against sinning. The other is an exhortation to anger. Be angry, but do not sin. That's right. The Bible commands us to be angry. Be angry. That's an order. Now, you may object that we've already got more anger than we know what to do with right now. And of course, you'd be right. There is indeed a surplus of anger out there. With increasing frequency and intensity, people are voicing their anger, venting their anger, voting their anger, and I personally will add, shooting their anger. But there's anger and there's anger. Yes, there's the anger of being cut off in the turn lane, of having a wait time that exceeds 4 minutes, of being berated in the comments on your post by a misanthropic troll. Then there is the anger that leaves us shaken and shaking because a sacred trust is being treacherously broken, because those who have done no harm are being gratuitously harmed, because those who have too little now have even less, and those who already have much, too much now, have even more, because egregious wrongs are being perpetrated, and the perps don't even admit that the wrongs they're perpetrating are wrong. What has happened is happening here, now, and everywhere. It's not merely a sin and a shame. It is an outrage. An outrage calls for rage, rage, rage that ought to come out. Anger in such instances is not merely permissible, it is obligatory, imperative. Thus, the command, be angry. Faced with an outrage, anger is the price we pay for paying attention. It is the rage that ought to come out because when faced with an outrage, it is a sin not to be angry. And now, Richard Rohr writes, great emotions are especially powerful teachers. I'm so aware of this in the experience of grief, after experiencing the deaths of my mother, a teenage niece, and my father. Even anger and rage are great teachers if we listen to them. They have so much power to reveal our deepest self to ourselves and to others, yet we tend to consider them negatively. Yes, they are dangerous, making us reactive and defensive, but they often totally rearrange how we know, or if we know, reality at all. Believe it or not, such emotions are ways of knowing. They have the capacity to blind us, but also the power to open us up and bring us to profound conversion, humility, and honesty. People who are too nice and never suffer or reveal their own negative emotions usually do not know very much about themselves. And so the rest of us do not take them seriously. Consider whether that is true in your own circle of relationships. So here we've had an advocate for anger. And to start us off with our discussion, I'd like to ask the panel, first of all, where did you learn about anger and that you shouldn't be angry? Or did you ever learn about it? How were you conditioned growing up?
Well, I'll answer your question. As a very young child, I learned about anger is when I threw temper tantrums that that was not good behavior, and I needed to, be more respectful. Or so a lot of times it was just immediately as a child, it was learned it's not okay to get angry. It's not okay, to throw a temper tantrum or to express that feelings that something that was making me angry it's not okay to do that. So that was very early on in my life. And along the way, it's just continued to go on. Is like you in school or whatever, it's like you could not act out when you felt angry, and you needed to just let it go. And so even as an adult today, I think so often when I get angry about somebody or something that's going on, I'm told, well, just let it go. You just let it go. You don't, why let that feeling do it? So it's like repress it. It's like, well, I have a valid reason I feel this way, So, but they don't want to hear it and they don't want to know about it. So it continues on that anger is not okay, you know.
Yeah, I think we wrestle with what to do with our anger all our lives. We got Linda Baker.
Yeah, thank you. My daddy, if he said it once, he said it 1,000 times to me. Anybody that can make you angry is smarter than you are. And every time I got mad, he'd tell me that over and over again. To the point, I guess I've decided about everybody's smarter than I am. But the older I got, the more I realized it's a good and a bad thing. Like you were saying, really, because some anger is legitimate. And when you have a point, when you have a very sincere point, and if you're just a steady type person, you can't really get your point across. You have to express it almost as though it's a form of anger in order to get your point across. And I think that's a strength, uh, rather than just letting things happen in the world and appear to have a que sera, sera type attitude about it. Okay. So it's kind of like you can be in my case, you could be a good witch or you can be a bad witch, right? And I think when it's a situation, you can cast a spell on it or you can say a prayer about it. And that comes with the age. When you're a kid, you cast a spell on it. And when you get to be an adult, hopefully you say prayers about it. That's my thoughts. Thanks. Thanks, Susan.
Reverend Linda?
Well, you asked who taught us about anger and expressing anger. As a child, as a young child, anything I did that drew attention to me was likely to get me beaten or punished or hurt. So I tried not to react out of happiness, joy, sadness, anger, at nothing, just nothing. Swallow it and shut up, whatever it is you're feeling, because it was safer. As a young teenager, maybe 12 or 13, I got so angry. I lost my temper. I saw red and I acted out in a way that scared me. And that taught me a lot about anger. But as I grew up and I developed, I realized, our tendency to put labels, that's a bad emotion, that's a good emotion, is really very unhealthy. All emotions have their place, and knowing how to express whatever we're feeling in mature adult ways is powerful and wonderful, whether it's anger, whether it's joy, whether it's whatever. Anger is a very passionate emotion, and we as truth students know that our prayers, our ability to manifest, is tied into the passion and power we put into our thoughts and our prayers. So anger can be a catalyst for wonderful, beautiful changes that we wouldn't have made otherwise, because who wants to cause a great upheaval? But if I'm angry enough, that will give me the fuel and the passion to do something about it. It will motivate me to make the changes that obviously need to be made changed. It's when I suppress my anger, when I lie about it, when it comes out sideways. No, that's okay. That's okay. I'm just gonna, stand in your way and not let you get to the kitchen or the bathroom or whatever, and be passive aggressive. And then how can we have a real discussion if I'm lying about my feelings and then acting out passively aggressive? I'm gonna just exacerbate whatever the problem. If I'm able to say, I do not agree, and I'm very upset about this situation, or it's not okay that you treat me that way. I'm taking myself out of this situation and maybe out of this relationship because I'm really angry at the things you're saying and doing. It can be a healthy, life-saving emotion. So I'm glad we're talking about anger. I think it gets a bad rap, and it can cause a lot of negativity if mishandled. But learning to own our anger and use it to change the world for good is a part of being our highest and best self. So thank you for that.
What I learned about anger growing up was that I was not permitted to show anger, but some of my siblings were. And I always thought that was unfair. And then as time went on and I entered the workplace, one of the things I noticed is that a male, could get angry in a meeting and yell and shout and so on and so forth. But a woman couldn't do that. If a woman did that, she was certainly chastised and thought less of. And so my sense of anger is, at least on the interpersonal level, is that some people, and some of them are male people, can get away with it, can get away with expressing it. But some of the rest of us can't. And I hope that's changing. I hope that's changing. What do you think about Richard Rohr's comment about outrage? He seems to be saying, we've been talking about anger interpersonally, but he is also looking at a global level and events that we should be outraged about. Any thoughts on that perspective?
I have some. And yeah, those of you who know me well know my stand on this because I'm outraged. It's the way we treat animals we eat for meat, for protein, for substance. Some of these animals never see daylight. They're kept in conditions that are horrific. They live in terror and fear until they die. And I think eating those hormones, those feelings as a part of the meat really creates a whole lot of chaos. One of the big ones, and I've talked about this recently, is eggs. Out here in Tennessee, everybody has chickens, and people often have too many eggs, and they'll just bring them by and say, can you eat these? Can you have these? And their eggs are just every color from gold to brown, even green, but I have yet to see a white one. And the sizes range just, it's amazing. And sometimes the eggs have two yolks, and these are wild, free, happy, incredible eggs. And I tell you, every time I see or open a pack of perfectly formed, exactly shaped white eggs, I'm outraged. What on earth are they doing to these birds to make them produce these things? Because I know happy chickens do all kinds of interesting egg laying. And a part of my outrage has motivated me not to eat meat that's tame and tortured, and not to eat eggs from slave chickens. And I hope more and more people feel the same way and make the same choices, or even better choices, creating a safe, wonderful, nurturing environment for the food that we eat.
Yes, I have seen eggs advertised in markets, free range. And in our family, I have a niece who is raising chickens. Are there other comments about, oh, go ahead, Kathy.
So talk about outrage where he talks about it. When you think about it, the only thing that brings about change in the world for the good is when people start to get outraged. With Martin Luther King and the march, the Peace March, and the protest, and the things that went about, brought civil rights about, so that the Black community, started to be recognized as being part of America and part of that. We watched on TV 8 minutes that a man's life was being suffocated out of him. And if that didn't outrage us to that inhumanity that was going on, that it was almost like, this is okay, I can do this, I'm protected, I'm a police officer. You know, the protests that happened and the changes that went about, you know, it was sort of like, we need to sometimes is get off our couches and get out there and start making change happen. If we watch January 6th and we're not outraged about our democracy under fire, then there's something wrong with our thinking. And I think that's where we constructively come together. If we're going to get changed in this world at all, is that we need to come together to lift this up. We can't sit back and say, well, it's in God's hands, he's taking care of it. God's over there going, do something. You're there. That's why you're on earth. Do something about it. And like Linda sharing about the inhumane treatment of animals and that for providing food, it's also what's going on in the world and around it's, but especially in our country, our own country. If this isn't outraging people about our democracy being tempted, you know, everybody's going to come out with reasons for this one or throwing blame and stuff out there. But there's a deeper thing that we need to get out there and start marching. You know, we never would have had Roe versus Wade passed years ago, back in the 70s. Women would not have gotten the rights that they had, that started getting them equal pay and other things, if the women didn't get out there starting to burn their bras and speaking up and saying something that, you know, we want to be recognized. We want to be able to have a career. We want to be able to, you know, have the rights that the men have. So it is outrage over the inhumane treatment of animals, people, races, culture. That's going to be what's going to take change. And I'm on my soapbox, and I do that often because there's so much going on right now that we need to speak up. And I just sort of get enraged about the people that are just sort of passively just going, oh, well, you know, it is what it is. And, you know, God will take care of it. And God's like, you know, shake us to our cores. How much more do we have to give up, you know, till we finally speak up? So I think it has to be a matter that, you know, you find your purpose in that things of how, you know, what can we change? What is out there and how can we change things? And, you know, I'm an advocate that gets out there to speak up and speak out and reach out. And if it's sending letters to the editors, if it's sending letters to our elected officials, it's sending letters to the president, you know, or whatever I can do to support people to get change to happen so that our country isn't turned into what happened to Germany in the 40s. So it's up to us to speak up. So thank you for bringing that. And
yeah,
sorry to get on my soapbox.
You reminded me of the Vietnam War.
Yes.
Yeah, Linda Baker. Whoops.
It's in the music. The answer is in the music. God bless protest music. I grew up in the era of Joan Baez, Judy Collins, Peter, Paul and Mary, Pete Seeger. I'm telling you, read the music. The answer's in the music. Give peace a chance. That's it.
Do you remember the song Ohio?
No.
No, that's okay. Other comments about anger? Well, I'd like to leave everybody with one final thought. Jesus turned over the tables in the temple, but he did not attack people. He did not attack animals. Thank you all for your comments, and thank you, viewers, for tuning in whenever and wherever whenever you're watching this. Feel free to send us comments. You can do that as you watch the tape. If you have ideas that you want us to talk about, suggestions for readings, maybe it's something you're confused about, that you'd like to have more perspectives on, be sure to send us those suggestions. We'd be happy to look at them. And finally, um, please consider joining us, being a panelist. And don't think that you would have to present something right away. They let me, when I joined this panel, they let me sort of ease into things. And so we would not put you on the spot right away. We'd let you get comfortable. So I really hope some of you will consider joining the group. If you know someone who could benefit from watching this, be sure to pass the link on to them. You can share this with whomever you want, and you can also subscribe to these panel discussions where you will get information about when something new is posted. So once again, thank you for joining us. Thank you, panel, for your wisdom.
Thank you for joining us, and let's stay connected and grow in spirit. We are on Facebook. Search for Unity Church of El Cajon and follow us and like our posts. You can reach us on YouTube at Unity Church of El Cajon. Please subscribe to our channel, watch our videos, and leave comments which can help us improve. We are on the web at unityofelcajon.org. Email or call our church office to receive our weekly newsletters, which lists all of our activities and opportunities to learn and grow together.